It was an ordinary Tuesday morning. The sun streamed into the dark executive office, catching the dust in the air. And then he saw it, just a glimpse, as her sleeve rode up while she reached for the curtain. A constellation of faded bruises and angry, fresh marks wrapped around her wrist. In that frozen second, the world narrowed to that single line of violence on her skin. The Korean Mafia boss didn't ask a question. He didn't need to. His fists clenched on the mahogany desk, his jaw locking with a fury that had nothing to do with business. Someone had hurt what was under his protection, and now they would burn. He is Kang Seo-jun, a man who built an empire from nothing in the shadows of New York's underworld. She is Alina, the quiet woman who keeps his world in order. What you're about to witness is not a love story. It's a forensic examination of a single violent truth. When the powerful discover a secret they were never meant to see, the fallout is absolute. And it begins with a question he is too afraid to ask her directly. Who did this to you? The answer will unravel everything. To understand the bomb that was about to detonate between them, you need to understand the powder keg each carried alone. Alina's story didn't start in that office. It started 3 years earlier on a Greyhound bus from Atlanta with a portfolio of fashion sketches and a heart full of impossible hope. New York was supposed to be the canvas. Instead, it became a maze of waitressing gigs and rejected applications, a slow erosion of that hope. Then she met Marcus. He was a bartender with a smile that felt like a rescue. At first, he was charming, supportive, the anchor she needed. The isolation came so slowly she barely noticed. He didn't like her art school friends. They were pretentious. He thought her job at the boutique was a waste of her time. She should be resting. He'd take care of things. This is how it begins. Not with a fist, but with a hand that gently closes doors, one by one, until the world outside disappears. While Alina's world was shrinking, Kang Seo-jun's was expanding with calculated brutality. Orphaned in Seoul at 14, he was brought to New York by a ruthless uncle to be a collector, a polite term for a man who convinces people to pay their debts by any means necessary. Seo-jun had a mind for numbers and a tolerance for violence that his uncle prized, but he saw the chaos, the unnecessary cruelty. By 28, he orchestrated a bloody, silent coup. He didn't just take his uncle's territory, he transformed it. He imposed structure. No drugs near schools. No trafficking. His operation became a brutally efficient machine for moving money, a shadow conglomerate. The penthouse, the tailored suits, the respect that made hardened men bow their heads, they were his armor. And like all armor, it was designed to keep things out and to keep things in. Their paths crossed because of a single, mundane listing. Alina, by then 2 years into her relationship with Marcus, was desperate. The boutique had closed. Marcus controlled their shared account. Her phone showed a balance of $87. The ad said live-in house manager. The salary was a fantasy. The interview was with a man named Mr. Kim in a sterile office. The questions were about discretion, about not having family who would ask questions. Alina, who had become an expert in hiding things, knew exactly what that meant. She got the job. Her first day in the penthouse, Seo-jun laid down one rule. The West Wing, his private office, was forbidden. She was not to enter, not to ask, not to look. She understood. In her life, there were already so many forbidden rooms. For 6 months, they existed in a perfectly choreographed silence. He was a ghost in his own home, leaving for meetings at odd hours, receiving tense visitors who spoke in low Korean. She was the quiet force that made his world run, the perfect coffee, the immaculate shirts, the fresh orchids that appeared without request. She moved with a careful, economical grace, but Seo-jun, a man who assessed threat for a living, noticed the slight flinch at sudden movements. The way she always positioned herself near an exit. He saw the shadows under her eyes that makeup couldn't hide. He said nothing. It was not his business, until it literally walked into his line of sight. The morning of the reveal, he had been reviewing security footage, not of his own home, but of a warehouse in Jersey. He was looking for a leak. His mind was a chessboard of threats and countermoves. Then Alina entered to adjust the curtains, her back to him. The sunlight hit her just so. The cuff of her simple gray sweater caught on the window latch, riding up 3 inches. And there it was, the evidence. A brutal necklace of fingerprints in yellow and purple around her slender wrist with the angry red line of a fresh burn beneath it. The data rushed in. Up to 80% of abuse victims never show visible marks. This was not an accident. This was a pattern, a signature. His brain, trained for tactical assessment, did the math. The flinches, the exhaustion, the isolation. This was not a bad day. This was a prison sentence. The silence that followed was louder than any scream. He watched her smooth her sleeve down, a practiced, automatic gesture. She had no idea he had seen. In that moment, Kang Seo-jun, who dealt in absolutes, faced a conflict his rulebook didn't cover. The research is clear. The worst thing a bystander can do is fly in like Superman, demanding answers, forcing confrontation. That can get a victim killed. The power dynamic here was extreme. He was her employer, a man of immense, terrifying influence. Over 75% of harassment cases involve exactly this kind of power imbalance. If he approached this wrong, he could trap her further. But the alternative, doing nothing, was impossible. The fury was a cold, solid weight in his chest. He didn't speak. He let her finish her tasks and leave the room. Then he canceled his entire day. Every meeting, every call. He sat in the darkening office and he began to work a different problem. Not who was threatening his shipment routes, but who was putting those marks on her skin. He started with what he knew. She arrived punctually, never took personal calls, had no listed emergency contact. She was a ghost, so he became a detective. A discreet inquiry to Mr. Kim yielded an address, an apartment in Washington Heights leased to a Marcus Boyle. A background pull on Mr. Boyle revealed a history. 2 restraining orders from previous girlfriends, both dropped. An arrest for assault, pled down to disorderly conduct. He worked as a bouncer at a mid-tier club downtown, a place known for its lax security and connections to low-level drug distribution. The picture was hideously clear. Elena wasn't just in a bad relationship. She was in the grip of a trauma bond. This is the psychological trap that keeps victims locked in. It's not love. It's a powerful emotional attachment forged in cycles of abuse interspersed with fragments of kindness, of apology, of the man he was in the beginning. The abuser becomes the source of both pain and comfort, creating a dependency so profound it overrides survival instinct. Seo-jun understood this language. It was the same technique his uncle used on loyal soldiers: brutalize them, then be the only one who offers solace. He was looking at a business model of the human heart. 3 days after the sighting, he engineered a reason for her to stay late. A supposed important dinner he needed her to prepare for, which he then canceled last minute. He ordered food from her favorite restaurant, something he'd noted she always saved the menu for. He set 2 places at the kitchen island. When she came in, confused, he simply said, "Sit." The meeting was canceled. The food will go to waste. They ate in silence for 5 minutes. Then, without looking up from his plate, he spoke. His voice was calm, devoid of the fury he felt. "Elena, if someone were causing you difficulty, if you needed an exit strategy from any situation, this house has resources, discreet ones." She froze, a fork halfway to her lips. Her eyes, wide with terror, met his. Not relief, terror. That was the second confirmation. The fear wasn't just of Marcus. It was of the consequences of being found out. She stammered, I'm not sure what you mean, Mr. Kang." "I mean," he said, finally looking at her, holding her gaze with an intensity that was both offer and demand, "that my driver is at your disposal, that there is a guest suite in this penthouse with a lock that codes to your fingerprint only, that I have lawyers who specialize in making problems disappear, quietly and completely." He leaned forward just an inch. "No questions asked. Ever." She began to cry, not dramatic sobs, but silent tears that tracked through her makeup. It was the sound of a dam cracking under unbearable pressure. For 20 minutes she talked. She didn't name Marcus, not yet. She talked about feeling stuck, about being afraid, about the dreams she used to have that now felt like they belonged to another person. He listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't offer pity. He offered logistics. "The suite is available tonight. You can go there now. Your things can be retrieved later, safely." She shook her head, a frantic, panicked motion. I can't, not tonight, he checks. If I'm not there, he'll come looking. He knows where I work. And there it was. The threat had already been extended to Seo-jun's doorstep. Marcus knew about this place. The game had changed. Seo-jun simply nodded. Then we make a plan for a night he doesn't check. We choose the time. We control the move. She left that night, returning to her prison because the psychological grip of the trauma bond, the fear of escalated violence, was still stronger than the lifeline he offered. But a line had been crossed. She had accepted in principle that she needed an escape. Seo-jun spent the night not in his office but in his secure server room, pulling every piece of data on Marcus Boyle. He found the club ownership records. He found the informal partnership with a small-time crew that was, to his disgust, trying to move product in one of his own distribution territories. This wasn't just a personal violation. It was a professional insult. A worm was in his garden, and it was biting the one person in it he had sworn, silently, to protect. A week later, Alina came to work with a faint, yellowish bruise on her jaw, expertly concealed with makeup. She didn't mention it. She didn't have to. That afternoon, Seo-jun handed her a small, unmarked phone. This only calls one number. Mine, it has no GPS. It cannot be traced. Keep it hidden. Use it if you need to say one word. Now. She took it, her fingers trembling. The trust was placed. The protocol was activated. The cliffhanger arrived on a rainy Thursday. Seo-jun was monitoring a feed, not from his own cameras, but from one his team had placed across the street from Alina's apartment building. He watched Marcus leave, aggressive even in his stride. An hour later, his own security system in the penthouse lobby pinged. A man was in the building, claiming to be a delivery driver for a florist. He was buzzed up to the residential floors. The man got off the elevator on Seo-jun's floor, walked past his door and placed a single, long-stemmed black rose on the floor in front of Alina's service entrance. Attached was a note. The camera zoomed in. The handwriting was crude, blocky. It read, "A gift for the help. Tell your boss to mind his own business." It was signed with a simple drawing, a snake coiled around a rose. Marcus wasn't just an abuser. He was sending a message. He knew Seo-jun was involved. The fight was no longer about saving Alina. It was a declaration of war, and Kang Seo-jun never lost a war. The black rose wasn't a romantic gesture. It was a bullet wrapped in velvet. Seo-jun didn't touch it. He photographed it, note and all, and sent the image to his head of security with 2 words, trace, isolate. Then he did something he hadn't done in 6 months. He walked to Alina's door and knocked. When she opened it, her eyes were red-rimmed. She'd seen the feed on her own monitor. Before she could speak, he held up a hand. "Pack a bag, essentials only, you're not going back there." The command was absolute, but his voice was low, controlled. The research is clear that in high-risk situations, removing the victim from the environment is the first critical step, but the victim has to be ready. Alina shook her head, that same panicked motion. "He'll know I'm here. He'll come." He said he would. "He already has," Seo-jun interrupted quietly. "The rose downstairs, that was him. He has made this my business. Now I'm making it my priority." He stepped inside her quarters, a breach of their old boundary that signaled the old rules were dead. "Listen to me. You have a trauma bond with this man. That is not a weakness. It is a psychological fact. Your brain has been wired to seek safety in him, even as he causes the danger. Breaking that requires physical distance first. Everything else comes after." He presented it not as an emotional plea, but as a tactical operation. It was the only language he had, and strangely, it worked. The clinical framing stripped the shame from it. She wasn't a scared woman. She was an asset being extracted from a compromised position. 20 minutes later, she had a small suitcase. He didn't escort her to the guest suite. He took her to a different wing entirely, to a room behind a bookcase in his private study, a panic room disguised as a minimalist bedroom. The air is filtered. The walls are steel. The door locks from the inside. "No one knows this is here but me. You are safe here." As the door sealed behind her, Seo-jun's demeanor shifted. The protector vanished. The warlord took his place. In his office, he convened a digital council. On one screen was June, his head of security, XROK Special Forces. On another was Ms. Park, his relentlessly efficient lawyer. On a third was a shadowy figure known only as the archivist, who could find any financial record, any hidden connection. "The target is Marcus Boyle," Seo Jun began, pulling up the dossier. "But we are not targeting the man. We are targeting his ecosystem. His income, his reputation, his allies, his sense of security. We dismantle it piece by piece until the structure collapses and he has nowhere to stand." Phase 1 began that night. Marcus Boyle worked as a bouncer at the Vault, a club that was a front for moving counterfeit prescription pills. Seo Jun did not send men with guns. He sent a tip from an anonymous burner phone to a very specific detective in the Organized Crime Control Bureau. The tip included times, locations, and the license plate of the distributor's car. It was pinpoint accurate. It was also a violation of Seo Jun's own rule about involving law enforcement, but this was a calculated contamination. At 2:17 a.m., police raided the vault. Marcus, trying to be a hero for his bosses, resisted arrest. It was caught on bodycam. He spent the night in central booking, charged with obstruction and assaulting an officer. His employment at the club, his primary income, evaporated before sunrise. Alina watched the news report on the secure tablet Seo Jun had provided. She turned to him, her expression unreadable. "Did you do that?" "I provided information to authorities about criminal activity," he said, his face a mask. "What they do with it is their business." This was the pivot. She was seeing his methodology not in theory but in brutal, concrete action. He was not a knight. He was a force of nature with a specific target. Phase 2 involved reputation. Using fabricated digital footprints and a network of online personas, the archivist began a smear campaign within Marcus's own social circles. Allegations of unpaid debts to dangerous people. Whispers that he had snitched to the cops to save his own skin. In the world he aspired to, being labeled unreliable, and a rat was a death sentence. His phone, which Seo Jun's team had cloned, began blowing up with angry, fearful texts from his so-called allies. His support network was turning to ash. Through all this, Seo Jun monitored Alina. He provided resources not just for safety but for healing. He had Ms. Park connect her, anonymously, with a trauma therapist who specialized in intimate partner violence. He had books on coercive control delivered to her secure tablet. He was, in his own way, trying to arm her mind as he dismantled her prison. But the trauma bond doesn't break with information. It breaks with lived experience of true safety. And one evening he found her crying, not from fear but from guilt. "I feel like I'm betraying him," she whispered. "After everything, I still worry about what this is doing to him." Seo Jun sat down, a rare show of shared space. "That is the bond talking. It is designed to survive on guilt. Your compassion is being used as a weapon against you. He is not worrying about what this is doing to you." It was the closest he came to true anger on her behalf. He showed her the files, the previous restraining orders, the hospital visit reports from his ex-girlfriends that matched her own injuries pattern for pattern. "This is not a relationship. It is a cycle. You are not the first. The only difference is, you have me." Phase 3 was financial. Marcus had a modest savings account and a car he was still paying off. Through a series of fraudulent disputes and frozen accounts engineered by the archivist, his savings vanished into bureaucratic limbo. His car loan was called in prematurely by a shell company that had purchased the debt. He received a repossession notice. The physical pillars of his life, job, friends, money, transportation, were being systematically removed. But Marcus Boyle was not a strategic thinker. He was an instinctual, cornered animal, and cornered animals strike at what they perceive as the weakness. He couldn't find Alina. He couldn't touch Seo Jun's fortress. So he went for the only other target he could think of, Alina's past. He tracked down her mother in Atlanta, a woman Alina hadn't spoken to in years due to a bitter falling out. He called her. He posed as a concerned friend, saying Alina was in trouble. involved with a dangerous Korean mobster in New York, that she was being held against her will. He gave the mother Seo-jun's address. He was weaponizing a mother's fear, hoping to trigger a cascade of outside attention that would force Alina into the open. The call was intercepted by Seo-jun's digital fence. He heard the entire conversation. This was the escalation he'd anticipated, but the target enraged him. Involving family, especially estranged family, was a uniquely cruel form of psychological warfare. He had a choice. Let the mother call the police, bringing a storm of unwanted scrutiny to his door, or intervene. He chose intervention. He had Ms. Park place a call to the mother first, presenting herself as a legal advocate for Alina. She confirmed, with carefully edited details, that Alina was safe and in protective custody due to an abusive partner, and that any contact from that partner was a manipulation. She offered to facilitate a secure, monitored call between mother and daughter when Alina was ready. It was a masterstroke. It neutralized the threat and potentially began mending a bridge Alina thought was burned. When he told Alina what he'd done, she was silent for a full minute. Then she asked, "Why? You didn't have to do that." He looked at her, and for the first time, the mask slipped enough to show the genuine confusion behind it. Because it was the right strategic move. But they both knew that wasn't the whole truth. The pressure on Marcus was now intolerable. Jobless, friendless, broke, and with his last manipulative play foiled, he did what Seo-jun predicted he would. He reached for the only currency he had left, violence, but not toward Alina. He decided to trade up. He went to the one group he thought hated Seo-jun more than he did, the remnants of his uncle's old faction, bitter men who'd been sidelined by Seo-jun's rise. He offered them a deal. He knew where Seo-jun lived. He knew the routines of the building. He could provide access. In return, he wanted money, and he wanted Alina delivered to him when they were done. This meeting was held in a dingy bar in Flushing. Seo-jun knew about it before Marcus even arrived. He had a plant inside the uncle's old crew, a man on his payroll for years. The feed came through to Seo-jun's office, grainy audio of Marcus, desperate and raging, laying out his plan. The old crew leaders were skeptical. They saw Marcus for what he was, a volatile liability, but they also saw opportunity. They agreed in principle to use his information. They gave him a small advance and told him to stay ready. Seo-jun now faced a consolidated threat. Marcus had just plugged himself into a network with real resources and a genuine grudge. The timeline for Alina's permanent safety had just collapsed. He could no longer afford the methodical dismantling. He needed a definitive end. That night, he entered the safe room. Alina was drawing something she hadn't done in years, a fashion sketch. He took it as a sign of emerging strength. He didn't mince words. "He has allied with people who want me dead. Your presence here is now the catalyst for a conflict. I can end this tonight, but to do it, I need to use you as bait." She put down her pencil, her hands steady for the first time in weeks. "What do I have to do?" "You have to be seen. You have to draw him out to a place of his choosing where he believes he has the advantage. I will be there instead." It was the ultimate risk. He was asking her to actively confront her abuser, to trust that his protection was absolute. The trauma bond screams against this. It tells the victim to comply, to return, to avoid provoking worse anger. Alina looked at the sketch of the elegant gown, then at the live feed on her tablet showing Marcus celebrating with his new allies in the bar. She saw the man who had stolen her dreams toasting with men who would kill her protector without a second thought. The bond didn't break with a snap. It frayed, under the weight of cold, visual evidence. "Okay," she said, her voice a thin, strong wire. "Tell me the plan." Seo-jun laid it out. She would use the untraceable phone he'd given her, not to call him but to send a single, panicked text to Marcus's number. A text pleading for help, saying she'd escaped Seo-jun and was hiding, terrified, at a specific, secluded location, a closed-down textile warehouse on the Brooklyn waterfront. It was a place Marcus knew. He'd taken her there once on a date, a secret spot. It was perfect bait, emotionally resonant and geographically isolated. Seo-jun's team would already be in place. They would capture Marcus the moment he arrived. No violence, just a swift, silent extraction. They would hand him to the authorities with a package of evidence so comprehensive, including his own recorded plot with the uncle's crew, that he would face federal conspiracy charges. He would disappear into the system for a very, very long time. The plan was elegant, it was clean. It leveraged Marcus's own psychology against him. Alina sent the text at 8 p.m. The reply was almost instantaneous. "Stay there, I'm coming, don't tell anyone." The hook was set. Seo Jun, dressed in black tactical gear, left the penthouse with June and two other men. He looked at Alina before he left. "The door will remain locked until I return and give you the all clear. No one else can open it. You are safe." She nodded, believing him. He believed it too. That was his first mistake. Because while Seo Jun was a master of planning for the enemy's known moves, he had made a critical error in his profile of Marcus Boyle. He had categorized him as an impulsive, brutish predator. He had not accounted for the cunning of desperation. Marcus had not gone to the warehouse. He had sent one of the young, eager members of the uncle's old crew to check it out first, a scout. When that scout reported back that the location was empty but showed signs of recent occupation, Marcus knew it was a trap. And he realized something Seo Jun had never anticipated. If Alina was bait, then Seo Jun's fortress was, for the moment, unguarded. As Seo Jun's team waited in the cold silence of the Brooklyn warehouse, Marcus Boyle was standing in the lobby of the luxury tower, holding a stolen key fob to a service elevator, a brutal smile on his face. He wasn't coming for Alina at the bait location. He was going to wait for her in the one place she was supposed to be safe. The hunter had just become the prey, and the battlefield had shifted to the one place Seo Jun could not afford to lose. Back in the Brooklyn warehouse, the silence wasn't just empty, it was wrong. Seo Jun felt it before June's comms crackled with the report. "Single male, early 20s, entered, scoped the perimeter, left. Not our target, repeat, not our target." In that frozen second, Seo Jun's tactical mind executed a devastating recalculation. Marcus had sent a scout, which meant he knew it was a trap, which meant he had not taken the bait. The primary objective had failed. But in warfare, when the primary objective fails, you immediately assess the enemy's most likely secondary target. Seo Jun's blood turned to ice. The secondary target wasn't a place, it was a presumption. The enemy would strike where he believed Seo Jun's defenses were now weakest. Home. June, the penthouse, now full breach protocol. He was already sprinting to the car, the cold night air doing nothing to cool the furnace of dread in his chest. As the car screamed back toward Manhattan, he tried Alina's secure line. One ring, two, no answer. The panic room was a Faraday cage, she shouldn't have signal anyway. But the not knowing was a physical pain. He pulled up the building's live security feeds on his phone. Lobby, clear. Service elevator, offline. He overrode the system, forcing the elevator camera back online. The feed showed an empty car, but the log showed it had been summoned to the lobby and sent to the penthouse level 12 minutes ago. Someone was inside his fortress. Meanwhile, inside the panic room, Alina was not answering because she wasn't there. This was the catastrophic flaw in Seo Jun's planning. He had accounted for the trauma bond's pull, but not for its transformation into a different kind of poison, a savior complex. When she saw the scout enter and leave the warehouse on her live feed, she didn't see a tactical failure. She saw a chance. If Marcus was distracted, hunting her at the warehouse, then he wasn't at his apartment. And in that apartment was one thing she needed more than safety, her portfolio. 3 years of fashion sketches, the last tangible proof of the person she was before him. In her mind, retrieving them wasn't a risk, it was a reclaiming. The trauma bond had twisted into a final, desperate mission to salvage her old self. She used the override code Seo Jun had foolishly given her, meant for medical emergencies, to exit the panic room. She took the service elevator down, not up, slipping out into the night. She was going to her old apartment. 2 moving vehicles, one purpose. Seo Jun racing to protect her, Alina racing to reclaim a ghost, and Marcus already inside the penthouse methodically searching, He didn't trash the place. He was looking for clues. In her neat bedroom, he found the drawings, the elegant gowns. He found the books on coercive control with passages underlined. He found the secure tablet locked. Each discovery was a fresh betrayal in his eyes. She wasn't just hiding, she was rebuilding a life without him, aided by another man. The rage was cold, focused. He went to Seo-jun's office. He couldn't access the computers, but he saw the dossier with his own name on it, sitting openly on the desk. Seo-jun had left it out during his last briefing. Marcus flipped through it. He saw the financial attacks, the social smear campaign laid out in bullet points. This wasn't personal protection. This was a corporate takeover of his life. And in that moment, Marcus Boyle transitioned from an abusive partner to something far more dangerous, a strategic enemy with nothing left to lose. He took photos of every page with his phone. Seo-jun's car screeched to a halt at the building. He and June moved with lethal efficiency, clearing the lobby, taking the private elevator. As the doors opened to his foyer, he knew immediately. The air was different. Someone was there. June swept left toward the living area. Seo-jun went right to Alina's room, empty. The panic room door was open. His heart stopped. Then he saw the blinking light on his desk monitor, a motion alert in his office. He moved silently. He found Marcus not hiding but sitting in his chair, feet up on the desk, scrolling through the photos of the dossier on his phone. Marcus looked up, a vicious smile on his face. Nice place. She always did want to live in a palace. Where is she? Seo-jun's voice was lethally quiet. That's the funny part, Marcus said, standing slowly. I thought she'd be here with you, but she's not. You lost her too. Seems like neither of us knows what we're doing. This was the psychological warfare Marcus excelled at, introducing doubt, exploiting insecurity. But Seo-jun was not playing that game. He assessed. Marcus was alone, no visible weapon, confident. That meant he had a play. You have something, Seo-jun stated. What is your price to walk out of here and never come within 100 miles of her? Marcus laughed. You think this is about money now? You ruined my life. You turned her against me. I have your whole playbook here. He waved the phone. I wonder what the cops or maybe your business rivals would pay for a detailed map of how Kang Seo-jun destroys a man's life. This is insider trading on pain. Seo-jun took a single step forward. You will delete those photos. You will leave. You will forget her name. Or what? You'll kill me. In your own home with your head of security as a witness. Marcus nodded toward June, who had appeared in the doorway. That's not your style. You're a businessman, so let's do business. I want 500,000 in cash. And I want a signed letter from your lawyer stating that all the financial disputes against me are errors and my accounts are to be reinstated with compensation. Then I disappear. You never see me again. It was a brazen, stupid play, but it revealed Marcus's true nature. He wasn't a mastermind. He was an opportunist who believed he'd finally found leverage. Seo-jun almost smiled. And Alina. She made her choice, Marcus shrugged, the cruelty casual. She chose the monster in a suit over me. She can live with that. That was the moment Seo-jun's last restraint shattered. Not because of the insult to him, but because of the final, wholesale dismissal of her humanity. He gave June a barely perceptible nod. June moved not toward Marcus, but to the desk. He picked up a small, decorative jade figurine. You like this? June asked, his voice flat. It's worth about 80,000. Then he dropped it on the marble floor. It shattered into a dozen pieces. Marcus flinched. That was a down payment, Seo-jun said. You are in a room where everything you see, including the air you breathe, is mine. You have no leverage. You have a phone. My systems have already jammed it. Those photos have not transmitted. They are trapped in that device, which will now stay here. He took another step. The business proposal is this. You walk out that door. You go to the nearest police station and you confess to the plot you made with the Jang crew to murder me. You do this, and I ensure you go to a federal facility where you might survive. You refuse, and I give you to the Jang crew themselves, along with a recording of you offering to betray them. They will be less bureaucratic. Marcus's bravado evaporated, replaced by raw terror. He was in over his head and he knew it. The predator was now prey in a much bigger jungle. You can't. The car is waiting downstairs, June said, gesturing to the door. The driver has the address of the precinct and a copy of the recording. Defeated, Marcus shuffled out, a broken man escorted by June. Seo Jun stood alone in the wreckage of his office. He had won. He had neutralized the threat, but Alina was gone. He accessed the building's external cameras, rewinding frantically. He saw her 17 minutes ago exiting the service entrance, hailing a cab. He tracked the cab's route via traffic camera algorithms. It was heading toward Washington Heights, toward her old apartment. His victory turned to ash. She had walked back into the lion's den, and the lion was now in a police car heading downtown. But the den itself was still toxic, still a place of trauma. He took a different car alone. He couldn't involve the team. This was beyond tactics now. As he drove, his phone buzzed. It was the archivist. "Sir, we've completed the deep dive on Boyle's finances. There's an anomaly. A series of deposits over the last 18 months, small but regular, from a shell corporation we've traced back to the holding company of your uncle's estate." Seo Jun gripped the wheel. "Explain." "It appears Boyle was on a retainer. Small-time intimidation, information gathering in his neighborhood. He was a peripheral asset for the old crew. His connection to them wasn't new. It was pre-existing. He didn't just go to them out of desperation. He was reporting to them about you, about who came and went from your building." The revelation was a stomach punch. Marcus hadn't just dated Alina. He had been placed near her, or she had been placed near him. Their entire relationship, the isolation, the abuse, was it all just a long game to plan a vulnerability inside Seo Jun's world? The conspiracy was so much deeper and darker than he had imagined. He arrived at the apartment building, a rundown walk-up. He took the stairs 3 at a time. The door to her apartment was ajar. He pushed it open slowly. The place was a shrine to control. Her things were neatly arranged but sparse. His things dominated. In the center of the room, Alina stood, holding her portfolio to her chest. She was staring at the wall where a single photo was pinned. It was a picture of her, from what looked like a hidden camera, entering Seo Jun's building on her first day of work. It was dated 8 months before Marcus had supposedly found the job listing for her. The timeline was a lie. She turned to him, her face pale. "He was watching me before I even met you. This wasn't an accident. None of this was an accident." Her voice was hollow with the horror of understanding. She wasn't just a victim of abuse. She had been a pawn in a larger game from the very beginning. The man who beat her and the man who protected her were both pieces on a board controlled by a ghost from Seo Jun's past. The personal and the professional wars had just fused into one inextricable nightmare. And in that terrible, silent apartment, the only question left was whether any trust between them could possibly survive the revelation that their entire connection was built on a foundation of lies. In that toxic apartment with the photograph staring back at them, the entire story rewrote itself. This wasn't a rescue mission. It was an excavation, and the deeper they dug, the more bones they would find. Seo Jun approached the wall, studying the photograph. The date stamp was digital, unforgeable by the cheap camera that took it. Alina had been under surveillance for nearly a year before she ever entered his penthouse. He turned to her, his face a mask of grim understanding. The job listing, the interview with Mr. Kim, it was all orchestrated. You were selected. Alina sank onto the edge of the bed, the portfolio slipping from her hands. "Selected for what?" "For me," he said, the words tasting like ash. "My uncle's faction, the old guard I pushed out, they have always believed my greatest weakness was my isolation. No family, no attachments, a fortress with no heart to target. You weren't just a victim of Marcus Boyle. You were a weapon designed to be placed inside my walls. A vulnerable, beautiful, tragic weapon that would either make me care, creating a vulnerability, or that I would ignore, proving I was the monster they claim I am. Either way, they win." The cruelty of the design was breathtaking. It exploited the very compassion Seo Jun had tried to bury. It weaponized Alina's trauma before it even happened. But a flaw emerged in their plan. They underestimated Marcus. They gave a volatile man a job to isolate and control her, and he took it too far, falling into his own pattern of abuse. And they underestimated Seojun's response. They expected cold indifference or a brutal, attention-drawing retaliation. They did not expect a strategic, protective siege. Alina looked at the bruises on her wrist, now fading to yellow. So all of this, the hits, the fear, the isolation, it was all just part of someone else's business plan. No, Seojun said, kneeling before her, meeting her eyes. The plan was to place you near me. The abuse was Marcus Boyle being exactly who he is. They gave a match to an arsonist and pointed him at dry wood. The fire was always his. This distinction was critical. It meant her pain was not invalidated by the larger conspiracy. It was real and it was compounded by it. She absorbed this, the anger cutting through the haze of shock. What do we do now? Now, Seojun said, standing, his voice regaining its steel, we turn their weapon back on them, but only if you choose to fight. You can walk away. I will give you enough money and new documents to disappear anywhere in the world. You owe these people nothing, least of all your participation in their war. He was offering her the clean exit, the true rescue. But Alina Swan, the woman who had survived the fire, looked at the photograph of her past self, so full of unaware hope, and then at the man who had just offered her freedom without condition. She saw not a mobster but a commander giving a soldier a choice. Her choice. For the first time in 3 years, a decision was entirely hers. What's the plan? The plan was built on 2 pillars, justice and restructuring. Phase 1 was Marcus Boyle. He was currently in a police interrogation room, singing like a canary about the Jang Crew's plans to try to save his own skin. Seojun, through back channels, ensured that the federal prosecutors also received the evidence of Marcus's long-term retainer from the uncle's estate. His plea deal vanished. He was now facing conspiracy charges that carried a 25-year minimum sentence. He was removed from the board permanently. Phase 2 was the uncle's old faction. Seojun didn't attack them with violence. He attacked them with legitimacy. He used the archivist to compile a devastating dossier of their remaining legal businesses, a shipping company, a chain of laundromats, and their ties to illicit activity. He didn't send the dossier to the police. He sent it to their biggest corporate clients, their investors, their licensing boards. Within 72 hours, their legitimate fronts were collapsing, their money flows freezing. They were being strangled in the light of day. Phase 3 was the personal confrontation. Seojun's uncle, Minho, was an old man living in guarded luxury in Fort Lee, New Jersey. Seojun went to see him alone. He was admitted without question. He was still family after all. The old man sat in a sunroom, tending to orchids. "You've come to kill me, finally?" Minho asked without turning around. "No," Seojun said. "I've come to show you that you've already lost. The woman, Alina, your plan failed." Minho turned, his eyes sharp. "Did it? It brought you here to my house emotionally compromised. That was always the point, to make you feel something. Anger, lust, protectiveness. It doesn't matter. Feeling is a weakness in our business." "You're wrong," Seojun said, and for the first time he believed it. "It's the only thing that makes the business worth doing. You wanted a vulnerability, you found one. And in doing so, you showed me what I'm actually protecting. Not territory, not money, a person. That gives me more strength than your empty scheming ever could." He placed a tablet on the table. It showed the real-time collapse of the uncle's shipping company's stock. "I am not here to kill you. I am here to retire you. Your assets are being dissolved. Your people are being offered positions in my legitimate enterprises. Your war is over because your army has deserted." The old man stared at the screen, his arrogance crumbling into bewilderment. He had played a game of knives, and Seojun had changed the game entirely. As Seojun left, he delivered the final blow. "Oh, and the orchids. The gardener you've employed for the last 5 years is one of mine. Every conversation you've had in this room is in the hands of the Securities and Exchange Commission. Have a peaceful retirement, uncle." The fallout was swift and quiet. The uncle's faction dissolved. absorbed or scattered. Seojun's empire emerged not weakened, but consolidated and with a decisive shift in direction. He publicly announced the launch of the Swan Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to providing escape resources and legal aid for victims of intimate partner violence, with a special fund for artistic vocational retraining. The initial endowment was $20 million. The press release named Elena Swan as the Director of Program Development. It was her new identity, her new purpose, forged in the fire of her old one. But the true resolution happened in private. Weeks after the confrontation, Elena was working in her new office at the Foundation's Midtown headquarters. Seojun found her there, surrounded by fabric swatches and architectural plans for the first safe house. She looked up, and for the first time there was no fear in her eyes, just focus. "I was thinking," she said, "the safe rooms shouldn't feel like cells. They should have good light, space to create." He nodded. "Whatever you need." He hesitated, a rare thing for him. "The penthouse, it's been cleared. The West Wing is no longer forbidden, but it doesn't have to be your home. You have your own life now." Elena put down her pen. "Where do you live, Seojun?" The question, the use of his given name, hung in the air. "I live in the penthouse." "Then that's my home too," she said simply. "But not as your housekeeper, and not as your victim, as your partner, in the Foundation, and in whatever this is between us." It was not a declaration of romantic love that would come later quietly over shared meals and silent understandings. It was a declaration of equal footing, of chosen alliance. He accepted with a single nod. "Then we rebuild it together." The final, surprising detail emerged a month later. The archivist, while doing a final sweep of Marcus's encrypted cloud storage, found a file. It was a video dated from a year before Elena met Seojun. It showed Minho, Seojun's uncle, meeting with a young, ambitious Marcus Boyle. Minho's instructions were chillingly clear. "Find a girl with talent, with dreams, but no family. Isolate her. Make her dependent. We will provide the opportunity to place her with my nephew. He has a weakness for broken things he thinks he can fix." But then Marcus asked a question the uncle hadn't anticipated. "What if I fall in love with her?" Minho had laughed. "Then you're a bigger fool than you look. Just do your job." This video proved that while the conspiracy was real, Marcus's abuse was not part of the script. His love, twisted as it was his own. He had taken a cold assignment and poured his own poison into it. This was the final piece of closure for Elena. The manipulation was external, but the violence was Marcus's authentic choice. It allowed her to fully separate the conspiracy from her personal trauma, to understand that her pain was not predetermined, but was the result of a dangerous man being given permission to be his worst self. With that video provided anonymously to the prosecution, Marcus's fate was sealed. He would never see the outside of a prison again. The story that began with a glimpse of a bruise ended not with a dramatic battle, but with a foundation being poured. Seojun continued to run his businesses, but the shadow receded, replaced by the tangible, legitimate work of the Foundation. Elena, armed with her lived experience and her reclaimed creativity, built programs that actually worked, because she understood the psychological traps they needed to escape. One evening, back in the penthouse, now redecorated with her sketches and his books integrated together, Seojun noticed her rubbing her wrist absent-mindedly. The marks were long gone. He didn't say anything. He simply went to his safe and returned with a small box. Inside was a bracelet not of gold or diamonds, but of polished Korean jade beads strung on a titanium chain. "Jade for protection," he said. "Titanium because it is strong but light. It does not weigh you down." He clasped it around the wrist that had once been bruised. It fit perfectly. She held it up to the light, then looked at him. "It's not a cage." "No," he agreed, "it's a choice." That is where we leave them. Not with a fairy tale ending, but with a hard one beginning. The hook that pulled you in, the moment he saw the marks and his world stopped, was not the climax. It was the detonator. It set off a chain reaction that cleared away the rotten structures of both their lives, leaving a cleared space where something new could be built. From a hidden bruise to a foundation for hundreds, from a silent office to a partnership that redefined strength. The system tried to use her as a weapon, and in response, they built a shield for others. Sometimes, the most powerful revolutions begin not with a shout, but with a moment of terrible, silent witnessing, and the choice that follows to not just look away. So what does this story leave us with? Beyond the catharsis of a villain defeated and a victim empowered, it leaves us with a blueprint of witness. The data tells us that as many as 80% of abuse victims never have visible bruises. That means the moment that started it all, the sleeve riding up, the marks revealed, was a statistical anomaly, a rare crack in a carefully maintained facade. Most violence happens in the silence between four walls, in the psychological wilderness of a trauma bond. What made this story possible was not the violence itself, but the fact that it was seen by someone with both the will and the means to act. Kang Seojun's response became a case study in effective intervention. He didn't charge in like a hero. He asked the fundamental question supported by research. How can I help? He provided resources, safety, legal aid, therapeutic support, while systematically dismantling the abuser's power structure. He understood that to free someone from a cage, you must first break the lock, not just open the door. The Swan Foundation they built is the institutionalization of that lesson. It is the weaponization of protection. For Alina, the journey was through the dark heart of a trauma bond and out the other side. Her healing was not found in forgetting, but in repurposing her pain into a toolkit for others. She transformed her intimate knowledge of captivity into architecture for freedom. That is the ultimate reclamation, not just surviving what was done to you, but using the scars as a map so others don't get lost. This narrative pushes against a dangerous myth, that only certain kinds of people in certain kinds of relationships can be saviors or victims. A mafia boss and a housekeeper, a Korean man and a black woman. Their alliance broke every stereotypical mold. It proves that the instinct to protect and the courage to rebuild are human traits, not demographic ones. The real conflict wasn't between good and evil in a classic sense. It was between entropy and order, between chaos that consumes and structure that protects. The lingering question, then, is not what happened to them. It's about the cracks we choose to see or ignore in our own worlds. The silent colleague, the withdrawn friend, the neighbor with the unexplained absences. The research on bystander intervention is clear. Small, deliberate actions create ripples. A question, an offer of a safe place to talk, a commitment to believe. You don't need a criminal empire to be a refuge. You need attention and the resolve to follow through. Their story was about two forms of strength colliding and merging. His was external, strategic, built on control. Hers was internal, resilient, built on endurance. Together, they forged a third kind, restorative strength. The strength to build not a higher wall but a stronger table, to turn a moment of horrified witnessing into a lifetime of purposeful work. If this journey through shadows and resilience resonated with you, if you believe in stories where broken pieces are remade into something stronger, then your witness matters here too. Help us tell more stories that challenge the narrative. Hit subscribe and let us know in the comments where you're watching from, because every story of silent strength deserves an audience that listens and remembers.